Thank you for tuning in to Matters of the Heart Radio Live with your host, biblical counselor and author, Ms. Wendy. You can chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in your player to send us a message. Now, here's your host, Ms. Wendy.
Hello and welcome to Matters of the Heart Radio Show with me, your host, Wendy Torres. Again, it is such a delight to have the opportunity to spend some time with you today, encouraging your heart as my friend, my listener, my supporter. I'm so thankful for the opportunity that I have to spur you on in your walk with the Lord and your journey. And today what I'm talking about on the show is God being our way maker. You see, I know oftentimes you may come across this show and you're kind of wondering, how am I going to make it through this hard time? What am I going to do? What if I don't get the raise? What if my business closes down? What if I have to move? What if my spouse files for divorce? What if my child doesn't come back home? What if they remain a prodigal for the next however long? Well, I've questioned some of those things myself over the years, and today, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Ancient of Days, our very alive God, the great I Am, being our way maker. He makes a way where there seems to be no way. Truly, He does. And if you have walked with Him for any length of time, then you also know yourself that sometimes it may seem like He's coming in at the midnight hour or the 11th hour, but He does come through. Oftentimes He's stretching us through hours 8, 9, and 10, and at the hour of 10 and 59 minutes, sometimes we may feel like we're going to faint and we just cannot push through any longer in waiting for our breakthrough. But today I'm here to encourage you and to remind you that God is a rewarder, that first of all, that He is. We must remember what the Word says in Hebrews, that first, as we come to Him, we must believe that He is what? That He is God, that He is wise, that Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world, that He is everything that the Bible tells us that He is, that we believe that He is. And understanding that He also is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. So if you're going through a hard time right now, sometimes that can be called a wilderness or a desert season. Sometimes in a counseling office such as mine, some people refer to it as the dark night of the soul. And sometimes that very dark night can seem like it's lasting forever. But today is about hope. Today is about reminding you that Sunday is on the way. Today is about reminding you of the miraculous things that God has done. David said that he encouraged himself in the Lord. Do you know what that means? That means he reminded himself. He told himself great things. He reminded himself of the great things God had done for him and that he had seen Him do in the past. And sometimes that's just what it takes to stir up our faith one more time, to believe yet again that God is going to come through for us, that He loves us. Sometimes we may have been through some difficult times or believed lies, because that's what they are, lies that maybe God is not good, or He's not for us, or He's not working things out in our best interest. And the truth is that He is. But if we ever begin to contemplate or doubt His goodness, we can waver in our faith and really begin to question whether or not we're worthy of His blessings, to question whether or not He loves us enough to do it for us. Sometimes it's easier to think, well, I can see why God would do that for them, but I don't know that He will do it for me. And the truth is that God is no respecter of man. The Word of God tells us that. If He can come through for me, He can come through for you. If He can come through for you, He can come through for me. And I've never met anyone ever in my entire life that has walked with the Lord that can say God has never done one thing for me. As a matter of fact, it's usually the opposite. People can usually tell me multiple things that the Lord has done for them. But where do those good memories go? Sometimes we get caught up in the hurriedness of life, and in the hurriedness of life, we forget about the goodness and the faithfulness of God. Today, I want to remind you, He is the way maker. He makes streams flow in the desert. He even causes trees to grow in the desert. He is the way maker. So if you feel like you are in a desert season today, I am so glad that you are tuning in, because today the Lord wants to give you a fresh cup of cold water to drink in that hot, dry, desolate desert that you're in. Well, joining me on the show is the ever faithful Christine, who helps push buttons and do all of the things that I cannot do, which I'm so grateful for. Christine helps to produce the show. Welcome to the show, Christine.
As always, I'm glad to be here.
So, Christine, I say that he is the way maker, and you heard my intro into the show, and I've really been thinking about this a lot as I feel like I consistently come up against these battles or things that seem impossible. Sometimes I'm thinking, and how am I going to make it through this one? And every single time God is faithful. Sometimes he does things in a way that I can perceive, but there are so many times he does things in a way that honestly I didn't see coming. He is the way maker. I don't know that the Israelites knew truly. They had never seen it before, so how could they? Maybe someone had an idea. How did they know he would part the Red Sea? He would make a way right there, right then, when their backs were against the wall, so to speak, the wall being a wall of water, and there was nowhere else to go. So he made a way for them. That's pretty profound. What are your thoughts on this?
I think in the overall sense of things, I don't know that God ever leaves us stagnant in our faith. There's no way that he ever just says, okay, you're a Christian, you're in a really good spot right now, you pray all the time, and you're doing really good, so I'm just going to leave you right here because this is the perfect place for you to be.
No.
And that's not true. And I think when it's just like a child, I think when God sees and knows that we are at a really good spot in our life, I think he pushes us farther because we're always stretched to be bigger and better and be perfect as my Heavenly Father is perfect.
Sure.
And I think that's always in our life, and to me, the way I sense it and see it is things like the dark night of the soul, where you feel like God isn't there, or a situation where it's calling you to be pushed in your faith or pushed in life, is a way of deepening your dependence on God. And although when I'm in it, it's much, much harder for me to see that than to be outside of it and looking at it objectively and saying, oh, well, God's just pushing you to be, because when you're really going through a hard time, like a spousal trouble or cancer or whatever, it's very trite to come across and say, well, God's just pushing you to be stronger. That's a very trite and probably wrong thing to say, but for me in my own life, I think many opportunities that arise that are difficulties are a way of God growing us in our faith.
Sure. And I can think of difficult times that I've gone through, and I just needed someone to say, hang in there. Help is on the way. Don't worry. Do not lose heart. Do not begin to assume that God will not be faithful, because doubt is not pleasing to God. It's our faith that pleases God. The word tells us that without faith, it is impossible to please God. Impossible. That means it cannot happen. It will not happen. That means that where doubt is, you eliminate the God factor, really. And then you begin to worry and think and rehearse things in your mind, because you're taking God out of the equation. But he does not want to be taken out of the equation, or to be in the equation when you feel like it's relatively convenient for you. No, today is the day to say, come on, don't let go. If you need a little hand, or you need a big long hand, I have a small one, but God has a great big one. We're here to reach in and to help you up. A long time ago was just reminded of a long time ago when I was going through a difficult time. A mentor that I had, a lady, she was so precious. She was so sweet. Her name was Vicky. I'll say her first name. She was kind of seeing me through a bit of a difficult time, and she said, you know, Wendy, when you feel really alone, and I used to do this maybe 10 years prior to when she told me, and I'd forgot. And when she reminded me, it was really profound in my world again. But she said, if you begin to feel really alone, and oftentimes if you're a mom or a single mom, or you're going through troubled times, sometimes your only real alone time is in the car when no one else is under the same roof. It's just you and your car. She said, when you begin to feel alone, extend your hand over to like where the passenger seat is and just say, Jesus, I need you to hold my hand right now. I need you to take me by the hand and guide me through this time. I feel so alone. And I would do that, and I would just begin to cry and cry because I could feel the sweet presence of the Lord when I would do that. And so maybe you're driving down the road right now and you're feeling alone. I hope that you take that to heart. And there's something that I have my clients do here in the office. I have them get a pair of gloves, a really good sized pair of gloves. And when they begin to feel alone, I ask them to put those gloves on. And for those of you who do not know, I'm a counselor here in Dallas, Texas, and I ask them to put the gloves on. And as they put their hands inside of the gloves, I ask them to allow the gloves to be a tangible representation of the hands of God. Does that mean that the gloves are the hands of God? No, absolutely not. All it is just merely something tangible in our world that will symbolize the presence of God. And just allow your heart and your mind to go there to where you are putting your hands in the hands of the Father. And you are allowing yourself to really release to Him the things that you're carrying, to be comforted, and to feel His very closeness, because He's not far away at all. So, along that same line, back to God being a waymaker, I want to talk some today about the faithfulness of God. You see, the Bible is full of stories, and I'm going to recount some of those today. They will all be paraphrased just to keep it smooth, to keep it simple, and to help save on some time. You're welcome to go back into your beautiful little Bible and look them all up. And in the Bible, we are reminded of multiple people. And these people were regular, common people, just like you and I are today. And they went through some really difficult times, such as the Israelites when God parted the Red Sea. That was an impossible time. The odds were unreal. Were they really going to be able to swim across there? No, they knew that, and they had children, and who knows if they even knew how to swim, period. You know, it's one thing to wade in a river that I'm sure they had done, but that's not very deep. And it's another thing to be in a sea. That water is deep, 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 deep. But there they are, their backs are against the wall of the Red Sea, and they need a miracle. And I want to remind you that God did perform the miracle that they needed. And they were saved. They went right through, and those that were coming after them were swallowed up. God sees those that are coming after you as well. He never closes His eyes. He never sleeps. As a matter of fact, you know, that's one thing that I try to remind myself of if I have things that are keeping me up late at night that I know I need to do the next day. Or it could be like today when my son is turning 21 and he's thinking that he's going to have a really good time with his friends. I think you know what I mean when I say that. And well, for a mom, that might be a little unsettling and so forth. But I reminded myself last night, and I'm reminding you now, so that you can sleep peacefully tonight, that God's not going to sleep. He's going to stay awake, and He's watching over every single thing that concerns you. And He even has His eyes on those who seek to destroy you, who want to even annihilate you, those who want to harm you in any way. And if you are wondering, how am I going to get out of this situation? I want to encourage you to do just as Moses did and cry out to the Lord and ask Him to make that way. And then when you see the opportunity, do not stand there and stare at it. When the waters part or the door cracks open, go through. I think so many times God does it, but then the person who's praying, this has been me sometimes, and it's been others that I know, as we're praying, we're saying, God, please help me, please make a way, please do something, open a window. If you don't want to open, if the door can't be opened, open a window. And then when it opens, they just stand there and stare at the open window or the cracked door, and they're thinking, should I or shouldn't I? Although they've spent countless times praying and asking God to make a way, When he makes the way, they become scared, and they just stand there. I don't want you to become paralyzed with fear. When he makes the way, go. Okay, so let's remember the Israelites and how faithful God was to them. Let's remember Abraham and Sarah upon his promise to them. You know, there's something powerful about remembering God's promises to us directly, words that he speaks to us, he speaks to our spirit, and words that he speaks to us through his written word, through the Bible. He told Abraham and Sarah that he would give them a son. And then he told Abraham that there would be more children than there are stars in the sky, more than he could count. And was God faithful to do it? Absolutely. God was faithful to do this. Were they past childbearing age? Or was Sarah past? Yes, Sarah was way past childbearing age. I cannot imagine someone that old seeing them with a big round belly. Honestly, after having 4 children, I cannot imagine Sarah in her last trimester trying to get comfortable. I really kind of wonder what her bed was made of and what her pillows were made of, or what kind of things did they have back then to help pregnant women be comfortable. I'm just not thinking very many. They don't have things that they do now, like body pillows, or maybe they did. They were just different, and things like that. But was God faithful? Yes. And I want to point out that she even laughed when she heard about what God was going to do. Did that stop God? No. He was faithful. Abraham, he was faithful to Abraham, the friend of God. He gave food from heaven. Here's another reminder. He gave food from heaven because the Israelites were hungry, and he showed himself as he provided in the impossible situations of life that they were facing in caring for their tangible needs. There they are in their own wilderness. There they are hungry. He cares about our tangible needs as well. And it may not be a filet, a steak that you eat every day, but he will give you your daily bread. My question is, do you ask? Do you believe? Do you seek? Do you ask? Do you knock? Because to those who seek, they will find. To those who knock, the door will be opened. And to those who ask, an answer will be given. But just like they were hungry and they needed food, he supplied manna from heaven every day. He didn't just help them one time and say, okay, I helped you. Don't ask again. Okay, I helped you. I'm done. You're on your own. See you later. Arrivederci. No. Day after day after day after day, he was faithful to provide the food that they needed. And it was up to them to go and get it. I've seen this so many times in the Word of God, where God does something. He begins to make a way. He hears the prayer. He answers it, but he doesn't do it all. He didn't just say, okay, I will provide manna every day, and it's in your house in a nice bowl for everyone sitting at the table. There's manna, now get up and go collect it, and then teach your children how to collect it. And just enough for that day. I don't want you to hoard anything. I don't want you to get carried away and all of that. I want you to get what you need today. Teach your children to do the same thing, and tomorrow when you wake up, I will be faithful again. And whatever you're going through today, although it may seem difficult and it may seem hard, I want you to know that God will be faithful to you today. And when you get up tomorrow, he will be faithful to you tomorrow. And when you get up next week, he will be He will be there then. He will be there then. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He will not change. He is our Jehovah Jireh. He is our provider. He will not abandon you. He will not forsake you. He will provide according to his riches and glory. He is not without resources. He is not without the ability to do what you need him to do on your behalf. So know that even the tangible needs that you have. Let's think about Hannah. Hannah was a lady who was really pursuing God because she wanted children, and her husband had another wife who was more than able to bear him children, and she taunted Hannah, and Hannah felt rejected. She felt even forsaken by God. And she would pour her heart out, asking God for a child, asking God for a child, asking God for a child. Do you remember what God did? He gave her a child. But not just one, he gave her many children. He came through. He is faithful. He is the way maker. He was more than able to give her just one. He was able to give her many. Now, I love the story of Hannah because she sought God with all of her heart. But not only did she seek him with all of her heart, she gave back. She didn't forget what he had done for her. And she gave back to God what he gave to her. Little did she know then that he would give her so many more children. He is faithful. He was faithful to Hannah. He's been faithful to me, and he will be faithful to you. What about whenever Jesus and his disciples needed money for taxes? Was he faithful? Do you need money for something? What's your tax situation like? Do you need some kind of supernatural provision? Are your eyes open for how he's going to provide? Christine, do you remember how that money came through?
Which money?
The tax money.
Which tax money?
The one that came from the fish.
Oh, yeah.
They opened the mouth of the fish, and there's the money that they needed. That's kind of really bizarre for me. I need some money. Well, go open the mouth of... What?
I think I should become a fisherman.
Open the mouth of a fish. Wow. He can do it any way he wants to, whenever he wants to, however he wants to. Let's take a break. Let's take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to pick up. Today it's about remembering that God is faithful, and he is our way maker.
Are you suffering from a past hurt? Lingering pains can inhibit your potential to be all that God has in store for you in your life. As a biblical counselor, Miss Wendy has written Healing Waters, a 21-day workbook which offers well-thought-out steps to emotional recovery. Making use of hands-on activities, prayers, and meditation on Scripture, Miss Wendy helps build faith and develop patterns that establish lifelong vitality. Why not take that step to the healthy, whole, God-filled individual you're meant to be? Go to mattersoftheheartradio.org to order your copy today. That's mattersoftheheartradio.org. You're listening to Matters of the Heart Radio with your host, Miss Wendy. We'd love to hear from you today. You can chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in the player located on mattersoftheheartradio.org, or you can also reach out to us on our Facebook page at Matters of the Heart Radio. Now, here's your host, Miss Wendy.
Well, if you're just tuning in, I'm so glad to have you with me today as my guest as I'm talking about God being a waymaker. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Matters of the Heart Radio Show with me, your host, Wendy Torres. It's a delight to have the opportunity to encourage you and to remind you that God is the waymaker. And if you hear another voice chime in from time to time, that's my producer, Christine, and I'm glad that she's here with me. As today I'm talking about how God does the impossible. We're not forsaken. We may feel forsaken, but we are not forsaken. We may feel abandoned, but no, we're not abandoned. Sometimes we just get lost in our own minds, trying to figure everything out and eliminating God from the picture more than what we really should. So we've talked and we've remembered, just as David did, about how faithful God has been and how he stirred himself up, how he encouraged himself in the Lord. He's provided money from fish, out of the mouth of fish. He's given manna every day for thousands and thousands of people to eat. Feeding people is not a problem for him. He's given children to the barren. We've talked about Hannah and Sarah. He's parted the Red Sea to provide deliverance from enemies and oppression. And the truth is that whatever you're going through today, he can make a way for you as well. And I want you to get your hopes up. I want your expectation to be there. God is always delighted when we put our faith forward. What if today we begin to think about, instead of putting our best foot forward, what if we begin to put our best faith forward? Putting our faith forward by speaking words of faith. I believe God's going to come through by speaking scriptures that support what we're believing, because God, whenever he sends out his word, it will never return to him void. And he is bound by his word. He is faithful to his word. And he is not going to go back on what he has told you. So let's think about Jonah. Jonah was running from God, and I don't know if you've ever run from God or something that you've wanted to do, but I've contemplated it quite a few times, such as doing radio, because it is such a big undertaking. But is there really pleasure and peace outside of the will of God? No, absolutely not. There's not. We forfeit that peace when we are not in the direct will of God. And we know that's what our friend Jonah did. He decided, no, Nineveh, no way. I am not going there. And if you know the story well at all, and if you do not, feel free to look it up. A whale swallowed him, and he was in the belly of the well for 3 days. And now, I think fish stink. And I can only imagine what partially digested fish smells like. And I'm not thinking that smells very good. And I also don't know anyone who likes to be surrounded in complete and utter darkness. There were no matches. There were no night lights. There was not a crack in the door for a slight bit of sunlight in there. Oh no, it was pitch black and wet. And in my imagination, stinky. And after being in Venice recently and riding on a large number of boats, motion sickness really comes to mind right now. I cannot imagine riding in the belly of a well for 3 days, nonstop. I would be so seasick. I would probably be contributing to the mess in that whale's belly. But God was faithful to take him from the belly of the well in the deep, dark ocean to dry ground, where he was safe, or he could use his legs and be on land. I think that there's something really wonderful. If that's ever happened to you, and you are just really, really, really ready to get off of a boat or an airplane or a train, anything like that, and you are ready to just be on land, then I think you're getting this with me, because that's me. But can you imagine the sigh of relief that came to Jonah when he landed there? And he's gone from the depth of the ocean to bright, sunshiny shore. That's a remarkable difference. God is the way maker. If he can do it for Jonah, he can do it for you. If he can do it for the Israelites, he can do it for you. If he can do this for Sarah, if he can do it for Hannah, he can do it for you. If he could do it for the disciples when they needed to pay taxes, he can do it for you. Remember, stir up your faith. These are not some sort of fairy tales that are nice, good bedtime stories. These are stories that highlight and showcase the power and the faithfulness of God.
And likewise, I was thinking as you were telling that story, the typography in that, which actually points to the story of Jesus being in the tomb for 3 days, and how his disciples they had lost, they were believing and believing in him, and to see him die and be crucified, you just think there's no hope now, because our Messiah is gone. He's been overcome, and that even in hiding in fear when he appeared among them, he made that way for them, and that faithfulness, even when it's the darkest hour, and you just right at your darkest hour, even when the bad comes to pass, it's like, oh, the bad has come to pass now. This is what I feared happening, or this is the bad that's happening, and I didn't expect for it to happen, but it has happened. Now what? And it's like, well, I guess God wasn't going to come through for me, but then after the fact, he does manifest himself. He does show himself and what he has in store for you. He didn't forget you.
Right.
He never forgot you, and he will make a way for you.
Right. This kind of ties in with the show that we did recently about change. Oftentimes it's because we do not want the change that we begin to feel forsaken. I feel forsaken because God changed my circumstances. I'm no longer working at the company I was working for. I feel forsaken. Where is God? You're not forsaken. It's just that He's brought about change. You may feel forsaken because you've gone from married to single or in a relationship to single. You're not forsaken. You're just, God has brought about a change. And sometimes it's not necessarily that He wants that, but if He doesn't bring it back together, it's probably for the best, because He doesn't work things for our bad. He works them for our good. It's just that sometimes we do not have the same understanding that He has. We can't quite compute all of the reasons why. But when those changes come, the most important thing is not that we understand the reasons why, but we trust the one that's allowing it. It's that we trust the who. We don't look to the why, but the who. Who is in control? Who will help me? Who has all of my days numbered? Who is the giver of good gifts? Oh, but God is. Our God is. Our God is. And you are not going to be forsaken by Him. It's against His word. It's against who He is. It's against His love for you. Let's think about Joseph and Mary. I love thinking about this. Joseph and Mary were given a plan and a way of escape. And their child was protected by God in the midst of evil rulers, and when their child's life was threatened. Now we know that their child was Jesus, and his life was threatened. Now the answer came, and some of you can probably laugh. It makes me want to laugh because it's happened to me too. The answer came in the middle of the night, at a least unlikely time, at a time when they're sleeping. Joseph gets a dream, and he's told directly, here's the plan: get Mary, get your baby, and get out of here. Now, sometimes the plan may come in a dream. I'm not going to say that it can't. God can speak to us any which way He likes. But it may not come right then and there when you're on your knees. That's okay. It may come when you're in the shower, out of the blue. That still small voice speaks to your heart, and you're thinking, is that you, God? Are you speaking to me? Well, test it out. God will speak to you. He is not one to say, I refuse to speak. If you look at the Bible, He is speaking all of the time. He is always speaking. And not just through the Word, not just through the Bible. He speaks through circumstances in our life. He speaks through nature. He speaks through other people. He can speak through songs. His ways are endless. But they don't always come at the exact moment that we wish. Sometimes they do. Sometimes I can sit down and pray and get quiet before God, and I really have an impression on my heart, and I really believe that's the answer that I needed. But it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes it's when I'm running. Sometimes when it's when I'm drying my hair. Sometimes it may be when I'm swimming or on vacation. I think it can come any which way. But again, it's important that when God begins to give the revelation of the next step, you get up and you do it. I didn't read in that particular passage, and if a listener is here and they read something different, which nothing to my recollection says so, and I'm not going to go to it because I have a lot of other references, it didn't say when the sun came up that then Mary and Jesus and they all got on foot and took off. No, I'm very much under the impression that He took her then, and they went in the middle of the night. So, what about you? What if God says, okay, get up and go here now. You need to meet such and such person, or I need you to go to X bus stop or train station. Are you willing to obey at the sound of His voice? Because that's really what it takes. It takes instant obedience at the sound of His voice. I'm going to say that again. It takes instant obedience at the sound of His voice. When He says go, go. When He says stay, stay. And when you do not know what to do, whether you should go or stay, remain doing whatever it is that you're certain that the Lord told you last until you know differently. So if you're saying, Lord, I don't know if I should move, and you don't have a peace about it, don't go anywhere. Stay right there until he tells you differently. If you're uncertain and you look at it and you say, well, I could go either way. I could go this way or I could go that way. Wait until you have peace. The Word of God tells us that he leads his children forth in peace. The absence of peace should mean to you a roadblock. It should mean something similar to a red light, which means stop, or a yellow light. You really need to slow down because you do not need to be going full speed here. But if you have peace and you have the green light, keep going, keep going, keep going.
The other things that come to mind in that regard is also that God will never speak contrary to his word or contrary to who he is. So, if you're getting a contrary word, that's probably a red light for you. Right. And I think, too, maybe a good idea is to ask for discernment of spirit. Because if you receive that discernment of spirit, you can continue to test the spirit. And in that discernment, God will. And there's nothing wrong with going back and thinking, hey, God, I feel like I'm getting this.
Sure,
is this from you?
Yeah.
And what does it mean? And just really thoroughly exploring that, because you can often get words that are either from you or not from God. And I think there's wisdom in saying, well, I'm getting this, God. What does this mean? Does this mean you want me to do this? And I think that's not disobedience. I think that's just the thoroughness of your spirit and heart.
Sure, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. But then there are times when you know that is God's voice. I know that that's God's voice. Instantly obey. Because sometimes when you do not instantly obey, you miss the ship.
Well, I think there's a lot of times as well where is this God's voice? Is it not God's voice? What do I do? Is it not? I'm not really sure. And then you start seeing that door closing and it's like, well, is it? And it's that hesitation. Do I jump? Do I not? Do I jump? Do I not? And I think maybe that's where a lot of people maybe get stuck, because it's that idea of, well, I don't know. I'm kind of comfortable where I am right here, even though the ship is not where I'm supposed to be anymore. And that to me strikes me as a time when most people might hesitate, because they're just not really sure if that's what they're hearing, if it's from the Lord, or if it's them creating that voice.
Sure. And I think that if you wait too long, you will regret it. I think that you can ask other people who have wisdom, who have some discernment, who have some insight. And you know what? If you happen to miss it, if you think that a door is opening up and it was never of God, God has a way of getting you back on track. I think that it's a greater mistake to not do anything than to take a chance that you really believe you're hearing the voice of the Lord and to promptly obey the way that you feel led.
Well, and I think, too, perhaps if you're asking others to pray with you, especially for these big situations, the opportunity to ask others, pray with me on this. Let's seek this word together. Where two more are gathered in my name, there I am in their midst. And that you have people doing that, and especially people that are really listening for the word of God, because they'll get a confirmation and tell you, I really think God's moving this way for you. And that can be your word of confirmation for what you feel like you're hearing as well, as the Spirit moves the same.
Sure. People. And I'll go ahead and follow your little rabbit trail there a little bit.
Bunny trail and good things. I've got a lot of thoughts in my head.
Yes. It is great if you do not have a group of people that you can count on to pray with you. It is great to begin to seek people out who can join you in prayer about different things. I know I have a really good circle of friends that if I need something, matter of fact, I was in that position this time last week. And I sent a group text to everyone. I said, listen, I'm about to go into a really serious meeting. I need some wisdom and I need you praying. 1, 2, 3. I mean, just fast. I probably sent it out to about 7 or 8 people that I knew would have my best interest at heart and would really pray effectively. And all of their words were coming back just resounding in the affirmation of what I thought God was going to do in that meeting. So if you do not have even one. If you do not have even one, begin to seek him out. Ask God, God, would you send me a prayer partner, someone who will pray with me regularly if I need them to, and someone that I can pray for as well. Your life will really be enhanced. Your spiritual walk will really be enhanced and really blessed as you do that. I've done that with Christine. Christine's done that with me over years now. And there are times that I'll say, hey, I'm thinking about such and such. And she can say, I don't know about that. Or she can say, you know what? I really think that's right. I was hearing something similar. And if you feel completely alone, maybe you're the only believer in your family, there is no church around you, and you're saying, well, that's nice, but I don't even have the option of someone to choose from. I would say there are Christian communities online where you can find people to pray with you, one. And the other thing I would say is the Word of God tells us that where 2 or 3 are gathered in His name, that He is there in their midst. You are always in a company of 2 because it's you and it's the Holy Spirit. Whenever 2 or 3 are gathered in His name, there He is in their midst. So when you and the Holy Spirit get together to pray, so in other words, it would sound something like this: Holy Spirit, I need your help. Help me. The Word tells us that the Spirit is always interceding with moans and groans, things that words can't even express on our behalf. You are always in a group of 2 or more. Okay? Now, back to is it time for a commercial break? Am I past that?
You can. This is your show, Miss Wendy. If you want to take a commercial break, we can take a commercial break.
Let's go for a commercial break.
Matters of the Heart radio show is a part of the only Christian radio station in Pakistan. Miss Wendy has the opportunity to share the gospel message there, and you have the opportunity to help. For a donation of any amount, you can help her to continue to bring this ministry to the people of Pakistan. For a donation of only $6, they will receive a Bible in their own native language of Urdu. Simply go to mattersoftheheartradio.org and click on the donate button today. That's mattersoftheheartradio.org. You're listening to Matters of the Heart Radio with your host, Miss Wendy. We'd love to hear from you today. You can chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in the player located on mattersoftheheartradio.org, or you can also reach out to us on our Facebook page at Matters of the Heart Radio. Now, here's your host, Miss Wendy.
Thank you for tuning in today to Matters of the Heart radio show with me, your host, Wendy Torres. I am talking about God being the way maker. I love putting my mind here as I have some serious deadlines I'm about to meet, and as I'm looking at some very big financial responsibilities and opportunities. It is great for me to encourage my own heart, my own soul, and reminding myself that God is a way maker. God is faithful. He is the one who can and will do the impossible, and He hears our prayers. When we cry out to God, He hears us. He hears us. And so today I'm encouraging myself, yes, but I'm encouraging you, my friend, along with my producer here, to remember that God is our way maker. He makes streams come alive in the desert and to flow. He can cause trees to grow in the desert. Don't you know that's the least likely place for a tree to grow? And do you not know that's probably one of the places that someone who is in the desert would love to be most, is directly under the shade of that tree? And streams and rivers are wonderful all around the world, but are they not especially wonderful in a desert where it's hot and you can cool your body or maybe quench your thirst? God is all about doing this in our life. We cannot forget, we cannot afford to lose hope. We cannot not afford to quit, to give up, to give in. We cannot quit on fighting the good fight of faith. We must not. We must finish this through all the way to the end. So we've talked about Joseph and Mary and how God was faithful to give them a plan to protect their child and to see them through a very difficult time. We've talked about Jonah and Hannah and the Israelites. Let's think about the widow that Elijah went to go visit. She was preparing to what? To die. She had a son and she was getting ready to make the last loaf of bread and die. She had already decided, that's it. We're going to eat this and we're going to die. We're going to die of starvation. That's it. There's no hope left. We're done. Now I'm going to tell you what I love. There are a lot of things I love about this story, about this widow that Elijah goes and performs a miracle for. But being a single mom, I recognize she's a single mom. She's a single mom with a son because she was a widow. And there's something deep in the heart of a mother that she's willing to give up anything and everything for her children. I can only imagine the sorrow in her soul as she was completely convinced that they were done and over with. There's no telling how many times she had prayed or begged or cried, asking for God's help. And maybe she had looked at it, looked for it, looked after it, and didn't see it. Or maybe she saw it on a daily basis and didn't recognize it. I don't know. But I know that God is faithful to single parents. He is faithful, He is faithful, He is faithful, He is faithful. And anytime we choose to believe something else, we need to begin to say that's a lie. And I renounce that lie. I will not believe that lie, that He is not faithful. I will not believe the lie that He is a bad or mean God. We are not here to believe lies. We are believers. We are to believe the good of God. God, the God of the Bible, Jehovah God, Yahweh, the great I am. So here's this widow, and I love how God provided for her. He sends the prophet, and he says, excuse me, dear single mom, who's telling me that you and her, dear single mom, I know you just said you and your son are about to die. You're going to eat this loaf of bread and die. But why don't you bring me some first? Excuse me? The single mom may have thought. Oh, but she perceived that he was of God. She understood and she knew. I love it because there's a selfish factor there that gets a bomb thrown in it. And when she goes to give to him, her jar is replenished. He's like, okay, now go and make some for you and your son. There's plenty. And the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. You know, even in hard times, people can even want to quit and give up because they do not see the hope for tomorrow. They do not see how it will be any better. They do not see that it will be good. But just because you cannot see it today does not mean that tomorrow it will not be real. By faith, Hebrews tells us that women received the dead unto themselves. By faith, Sarah and Abraham had their child. By faith, I love the roll call in Hebrews it's called the Hall of Faith, Hall of Fame, Hall of Faith. Faith will get us somewhere because God is good and we believe in His goodness. So can you see how doing the opposite of that would bring exactly the opposite of that? Have you been spending your time thinking about how unfaithful God can be, how undependable He can be? Are you convincing yourself of that or entertaining that thought or idea? Today is the day to let that go because that works against you. It does not work for you, for it is only with faith that we can please God. And without faith, it is impossible to please Him. And we want to be pleasing. We want to be pleasing sacrifices in His nostrils. So there she is, the single mom, ready to die. Sometimes people take their life because they cannot see and they cannot believe and they cannot imagine that tomorrow will be good. But God is the day of today and God is the day of tomorrow. And tomorrow can and will be good.
Two of the more contemporary people that I think of when you talk about being faithful to what God's called you to is one St. John of the Cross, who coined the term "A Dark Night of the Soul," and there is a book that was part of his writings called "The Dark Night of the Soul," and it's helped a huge amount of people walk through these times like this. And I'm sure you have several books that you could also illustrate that talk about walking through dark times and faithfulness. Another huge example that I think of is Mother Teresa, who walked through an enormously dark time, and she never in her life thought that God was actually with her. She felt completely abandoned by God and that he did not love or care for her. And this actually was so hidden within her that nobody knew this until after she had passed, and her bishop had told those that were looking into her life about this, and saying, actually in letters she wrote about feeling abandoned by God. And this shocked everybody because her life and the way that she carried on was so much so and such a personification of being a Christian that people were surprised she felt this kind of an abandonment. And because she continued, and as far as I know, throughout her entire life, she never had a reprieve from that, but continued to be so faithful to what God wanted to do. And the fruit that God brought out of her example in her life is nothing short of miraculous in itself. So while she never maybe saw that rainbow at the end of her life, and I think that's an extraordinary exception, not the rule, the way God operates, but it's certainly inspirational to the faithfulness that God has to doing and staying obedient to what He's called you to, because it's a miraculous thing to me to see that strength and how He works through people.
Interesting fact. Do you know that I have the same birthday that she does?
I did not know that.
August 26th. We both have a birthday on August 26th.
Wow.
You're right. And it's sometimes it can feel like a storm on the inside of us. And we can feel really confused as to whether or not we really feel the presence of God or not. I think that sometimes God allows those seasons in our life because it's not always about feelings and about feeling Him as much as knowing Him. I want my kids, they may not always be in my presence to hear my voice, but I want them to know me well enough and to trust my love enough that if they are in another country somewhere else and something is going on, or they just want to chat, I'm right there. My heart is always with them. And for me, as a mom, I'm only a phone call away. All right, next, Ruth. I love Ruth. Do you know the story of Ruth? I love the story of Ruth. What about the faithfulness of God to Ruth, another woman? She was a young widow. She was not an older widow. She was a young widow. And she was a Moabitess. And Naomi was her mother-in-law. She was married to Naomi's son. And she found herself as a widow. And as a widow, she had no children. She had her mother-in-law, whose husband had died, so her father-in-law was dead. And she had her sister-in-law, whose husband was dead. So there were 3 women, and in that time, you needed a man to justify your existence, basically. You needed a man to provide for you, take care of you, and to make a way for you in society. And because what were they going to do? So they felt very abandoned. But God, there's always a but God, and I love the but Gods in the Bible. But God was faithful again. He is the way maker. And He took her and Naomi. They traveled together. They went back to Naomi's place of origin. And when they did, Naomi began to give Ruth instruction. Go and glean in my relative's field. Go to Boaz. Oh gosh, I love Boaz. Boaz is after my heart. I gotta love Boaz. Boaz fell in love with her quickly and was so generous and so kind to her. She went from probably hardly having anything to eat. I'm surprised at the strength that they had to get back home to Naomi's home, to having more than enough. He loaded her up with grains, with barley, and said, "Here, for you and for your mother-in-law." She went from nothing to more than enough. I love the story of Ruth and the faithfulness of God, and how Boaz took her in then, and she had a son. Not only did she have a son and an heir and a little boy to love, who was Jesse, who was the father of David, but Naomi had a grandson, another man in her life, but her direct blood, her direct descendant, to cherish, to nurse, because she nursed Jesse, to adore, to leave a legacy with. They seemed abandoned, but it was only temporary. The trouble that you're going through, just like Naomi and Ruth, and just like myself, our troubles are temporary. They're not even worthy to be compared with the glory that is yet to be revealed. The hard times will pass. He is the way maker. Shake off the doubt, shake off the discouragement, and renounce the lies. If it does not line up with the Word of God, it should have no place in your heart. You've been listening to Matters of the Heart radio show with me, your host, Wendy Torres. Go to my website. Let me know what matters are on your heart, and let me know how the show is impacting your life. If you don't mind, I'll give to you and you can give back that way. And I would also appreciate your financial support to help keep the show on the air at mattersoftheheartradioshow.org. That's mattersoftheheartradio.org. I messed up.
You've been listening to Matters of the Heart Radio Live. If you enjoyed listening to the show today, we ask that you support it with your gifts. The show could not be made possible without generous contributions from our community of faithful listeners, and in order to make it possible to remain on the air, we need your help. The show is made possible for you and with you, so please consider making a donation today. Please visit the show's website, mattersoftheheartradio.org, and click the donation button at the bottom of the homepage. Learn about partnership opportunities and corporate sponsorship with us to order a signed copy of Miss Wendy's book, Healing Waters. To schedule a counseling session with Ms. Wendy, go to refreshingtimescounselingcenter.com. Visit us on Facebook, and please don't forget to tune in next week with Ms. Wendy on Matters of the Heart Radio Live.